light coming up soon, and we're live.
Okay, so Jono, we're going to answer, well, not even answer, we're just going to chew over some questions that have been asked in the Living Systems community. And there's actually a big list here. So what I thought was we'll just start, and I think we might be able to get through most of Lennart Prinz's questions. And if we've got more time, we'll carry on into some more. But there's some really cool stuff in here. So I'm just going to ask you a question. We haven't had any preparation at all. I've just looked at the questions and sort of written them out in a different way. And Jono's never seen these questions. So we're coming from a completely blank slate.
Yeah.
So the first part of the question from Lennart Prinz is, how could someone contribute to the regenerative agriculture movement without owning land?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's amazing how much you can contribute without owning land. I don't own land. Anyway, just had to pop that out there. Don't own any land. And the biggest thing for me is get understanding what it is that this thing we call regenerative agriculture is all about, because in this day and age of information availability, we're all scholars. It's just you've got to apply yourself. But the biggest thing, and like any community, is communication. So it's one of the things we based Living Systems on, is the sharing and communication and authenticity of sharing amongst its members. And so for me, and how I started, was literally like when I started to learn about biological function, ecological function, and soil health, I was just sharing it out there on Snapchat. I didn't have Instagram at the start. It was just Snapchat. And then all of a sudden we had these Facebook stories and Instagram stories, and I got Instagram, and I was just sharing all the time. And that not only helps with other people to learn, but it also helps to fuse that information in your head. Like anything that you do, whether it's a sport that you're learning, a physical activity, a academic activity, it's not until you get on the court and start playing with that and communicating it that it really starts to become, stored and waiting there ready for use. And sharing that with other people, that's getting on the court, that's making your learnings real. And that's the biggest thing for me is, when I first started, actually just recently at the South Island Field Days, I reminded myself of 2 years ago when the last South Island Field Days was on. I was literally just walking around talking to people about what I was learning, listening into conversations and contributing into conversations with my perspective. And I had like 3 or 4 people track me down online and just say, hey, I really appreciated your conversation. And some of these were 2-minute conversations, some were 10-minute conversations. So for me, the biggest thing, if you want to contribute, get in communication, get sharing. Microbes don't wake up in the morning like, well, I'm going to retain this nutrient, I'm going to retain this service that I can provide. You just got to share it.
Well said. Yeah.
And how do we do this, man? Do I get to flip it and just say, because I don't know the questions to ask you, so
yeah, maybe I'll just ask the questions to you.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll add a little bit after each question.
Okay, man. But feel free to, if you want to answer a question first, let's just wing it. If you want to answer one, feel free to do so.
Let's wing it. So
it's what we normally do.
Man, that was so good, Jono, that answer. Communication is so important, and actually participating in that dialogue and that discussion is where you really solidify your knowledge and understanding and contribution. So also, I would say you don't have to own land to regenerate land. Yeah, I mean, there's potential to start gardens and things like that, be involved in different gardens and farms, the growing food. There's just wherever there's soil, being in touch with it can be quite powerful. So the next question, how do we connect landowners with the next generation of farmers?
Yeah. And I guess the first thing that comes up for me is why is it that we want to necessarily create that direct connection? What is the intention in doing that? Is it to upskill the next generation, or is it to have them create a pathway to be stewards themselves? And I'm not asking you, Dan, that question for you to answer, but I'm just asking the question as a point of curiosity. But if that were the case, first, if the next generation is already on a farm awaiting a succession, then what's really important is open communication. So around the table communications, not a lot of people have in their heads that a succession, a farm succession, looks like continuing the way that things have always been. And there's often this traditional, inherited context around that being quite difficult, as in a bit of tension around, oh, that's your way, this is my way's right, your way's wrong, this is how I've always done it. And so just letting all that go, and sort of touches on the previous question a little bit as well with regards to sharing, is sharing not from a place of righteousness, but just from a place of what has been so for you thus far, not like it's something you're attached to being the truth, full stop. Because if we all come together with open minds of listening to people's experiences, perspectives, and declarations of what's possible, that's how we get innovation, that's how we get progression. And so if that's the conversation of a succession, then just open, round the table, welcoming diversity of perspectives, and then working together on what it looks like to move forward together. And I've seen that on farmers, on farms with 3 active generations on farm, 4th up and coming, learning to walk. And it's just so powerful seeing 3 generations of perspectives working together and welcoming each other's perspectives. Not like, no, that's not what we do around here, or that's crazy. I remember my very first client being in my truck with him as the son, who was now the active practitioner on the farm, was direct drilling in a cover crop into pasture. And the gentleman was in my truck, the father, the older generation that was still on farm, was just looking, and he had the smile on his face. We're driving alongside this direct drill as it was drilling into pasture. And he says to me, his name's Ross. He says to me, Jono, I never thought I'd see the day that we'd be drilling into green pasture. We had just sprayed the pasture off that same day, but just that was a completely absurd thing. And now that's what they're doing. There is no bare soil. There is no point where there's no living roots in the ground. And they're used to fellows being the truth. And he was open and he was willing to learn. And this farm succession is, it's not a case of here's the reins, take it over. It's like this cool interim where there's 3 generations working together.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, Dan, but just back to the other context, if it's not succession, if it's just someone interested, like say, when I came into the farming industry, I wasn't from a farming family. I got given an opportunity. what I had to break through was a divide between urban and rural. There was this thing where, if I hadn't have been introduced to the farm directly through my mum's relationship with the guy who taught me what I, started learning, she was friends with his wife. If we didn't have that direct connection, I would have never have felt like I was able to enter the industry, because I was just this, kid from Duntroon. And that to me was urban, even though there was a population of maybe 50 or 60 people. It's like, I didn't feel like I was able to break through that invisible divide. So, part of Living Systems and everything else that I'm committed to and actively participating in is really about removing these divides so that we can have these open conversations, so that we can have this new influx of perspective into the industry.
Yeah, great story.
Sorry for interrupting you, man.
No, I've there's heaps of thoughts going on as you're talking, and it's all so great. I guess I'd just say I really like the word regeneration has got generation in it, and a generational shift of people on the farm, whether that's father to son or daughter or someone completely unrelated coming onto the property and adding their ideas. It's a massive opportunity for a new perspective on what's happening, and there needs to be a crossover and a connection of those two generations to get that regeneration. And it's a nice picture in my head. So.
Wow, that's a new one I've never heard before. I've never thought about it. Generation, not as in to generate, but intergenerational, regenerational. Wow. That's a cool insight, man.
How will regen ag become more of the status quo, not just the sideline thing?
Not the alternative strategy. As people wake up, and I say wake up because that's what it felt like for me when I started to learn and discover. It's like I awoke from a slumber of, prescription farming and calendar farming. It really was an awakening for me. As more people start to wake up and become confident in sharing their discoveries, very quickly, and I believe we're very close to this right now, we'll reach a tipping point where, often known as critical mass, where the multiplication of the application of regenerative principles will become that where, we just don't have these, us versus them discussions. It's like that's the current paradigm of the past paradigm is like our way, their way, division, conflict. And, the status quo, it's like even to say the status quo creates division in a way. What I see is a future of acceptance. And regeneration and regenerative agriculture can look like so many different things. And I think we'll get to a point where it's just farming. We're all just farming, and we're just mindful of our actions that we're taking on farm. And it's not even a fad. It's just farming. And I think, we're actually closer to that than what I often, give credit for. I think we're getting close, man. The fact that you and I are here having this discussion right now, that the odds of that, what were the odds? It's nothing.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. Like, things are moving, man. Things are happening.
Yeah, and changes don't happen in a linear fashion. Like big changes don't happen in a linear fashion. They don't just slowly build up, really. They just reach a threshold like you're talking about, and then they just, whoa, this is just normal.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, and even the idea of like it turning from being this type of farm and that type of farm to or regeneration farming or conventional farming to just farming, like you said, perhaps even that could shift to it's just living.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
what we do. We grow
yeah,
food.
because yeah, what is the definition of farming? It sounds extractive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just how you see it, I suppose.
And then also, like,
mm,
to change means to move from something with that being a predicate of the next thing. Whereas what we're talking about is transformation, shifting a paradigm, creating from nothing, letting go of, I love Jonathan Lundgren's definition of, he named his science foundation or research foundation ecdysis. I think that's just a beautiful word to describe what is taking place right now, is we're forgiving ourselves for the direction we've been going in, and we're not being hard on ourselves. We're not holding on to all the stuff to create from it something new, which isn't new because it's a predicate. We're literally creating from nothing these systems. We're not making wrong the past. So in that, there's no division, there's no resignation about the past. If I was to be, holding on to my past, I've got some catching up to do if that's the case, as far as the ecological damage that I've personally carried out. But I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not holding on to that. I am, at some point, I drew a line in the sand, and that in that moment, that's transformation. That's not change. That's creating from nothing something.
Yeah. And ecdysis, if I remember right, means like metamorphosis of a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Mm.
Yeah. So, so it's not making wrong the fact that that used to be a caterpillar.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's not a caterpillar with wings.
okay, it's a butterfly.
Yeah.
Right. So, next question.
That was cool.
Will legislation around environmental management on farm create a top-down effect? Um, a top-down effect kind of driving the move to regenerative. So will the legislation or the sort of top-down government structure be driving the move to regenerative or not?
I'm going to answer this one just really briefly. I'm going to let you come into this one because I think this is your baby. This is your space. I'm just going to say straight up, no. I believe in the ground up movement, and I believe in when you create something as being something you cannot do, all of a sudden, for me, as like a, I was a reasonably arrogant human being. You tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? Like I was the rebel. I was the badass. I was the, yeah.
You still like that, Jono?
Yeah, I still don't like being told what to do. For sure. I'm not necessarily a badass, but it's like, someone tells me to do something. Hang on a minute. But no, seriously, I believe in, you look at globally, for instance, legalizing drug use in certain, I'm not pro drugs, but in removing the stigma around something, we see all these ripple effects, like a decline in drug use. It's like really well correlated, that. So when you when you create awareness around something being not so helpful, but you don't say you mustn't do that, people have the choice. And people will often make that choice powerfully. However, when someone is in a situation where they're doing something that isn't so great, and they subconsciously know it's not so great, which is irrelevant really to what I'm trying to say here, but they have no access to anything else, any other way, and they get told that they cannot do that anymore. What do you think is going to be there for them? Is there going to be any room for creativity? Is there going to be any room for freedom, for choice, for expression, for discovery? No, it's going to be like this. Whereas if you take that away, get rid of that, no, you cannot do that, there's nothing there. And then you get to realize, oh my goodness, I'm hitting my head against a non-visible brick wall. I might just stop doing that now. And oh, there's all this whole world out here. Oh, hang on a minute, I'm going to go look out here. But at first, you've got to get away from this.
Yeah. Yeah, what I kind of am seeing is that often we're talking about coping strategies. So substance abuse is commonly seen as a coping strategy to whatever's going on in their world. And by making that bad in itself, they either have to find another way to cope, another strategy to just make it work, or just fight that and bang their head against the wall and just do it anyway, or don't do it and struggle. But by taking the stigma away, then that actually opens up an opportunity there to say, well, okay, if that's okay, or if that is accepted, then where do we go from here? Is there a pathway to creativity? And so we're getting really far away from legislation. Oh no, I guess it's a little bit.
No, man, what you're referring to there is like the you referred to substance abuse. That's literally the agricultural sector globally right now.
Yeah. So
we're not just talking, like this.
Yeah.
And, and like, for instance, take the nitrogen thing. So if we're used to, and I'm going to use another drug reference here. So we're used to applying, granular nitrogen. I'm just going to stick to nitrogen here. And I know that nitrogen's an important element. And also know that the atmosphere is 74% nitrogen and it's all waiting to be put into the soil. But that's a biological function, but we'll come back to that. The model of applying granular nitrogen is a really poor efficiency. So we get at best, we might get a 40% utilization of that N. N's a really volatile, substance. It's a very volatile, it's water soluble in that form. It also volatilizes into the atmosphere and it's really leaky. It's really, like I say, our plants use a very low percentage of that. And so when you look at the total amount applied, what our plants are getting are very low. So what we have to apply in total was quite a lot. And then all of a sudden we get told that we can't use as much. And so, okay, and now how are we going to operate? And I see a lot of people going to foliars, which I completely can see, and I am an advocate for foliars if we're still in that transition of our pastures or crops needing that input. It's a much more efficient thing. So it's a bit like either swallowing the party pill or the whatever it is your substance of choice. Or, how do you get that increase of efficiency? Well, I'm going back to my younger days. You chop it up and you put it into your body in either up your nose or, and I'm not saying I've ever done this, everyone knows this, all this stuff's really, it's on the television, it's everywhere. Or people that old reference we always do, in the vein. And so they're still using the substance, but the amount they're using is a fraction of what they were using when they were just swallowing it or when they were just putting it on the soil in granular form. So see that in that moment that the regulation is just making people use the product in a more efficient way, which great for the environment. We have less leakage, we have less going outwards, and we're still using that, we're still reliant on that substance. Do you know what I mean? I don't know where I was going with that, man. This is open dialogue, and
It makes sense. Yeah, and so I'll try and talk a bit about my environmental legislation and what I think about how that drives positive practices on farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I would answer the question, will the legislation create a top-down effect driving the move? No, just like you said, because same sort of reasons. It's very much what you can't do. And really, regeneration is about discovering what you can do. And yeah, without going into details of specific things, maybe it's best to focus on nitrogen. So now we've got legislation saying that we can't use more than 190 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. Well, okay, if they're going to stage that down, I don't see that's going to be a force towards change towards regenerative. It's just going to be something that you can't do, another box that you've got to tick, that's got to be measured and got to be proved that you're not doing. It's going to be a bottom-up movement to regeneration, because it's going to be a discovery of what you can do. If anything, the legislation side of things is going to make it harder to do positive changes on farm, which is frustrating. I'm incredibly frustrated, but I'll just leave it there.
Good idea, man. I can see something coming up there. It's like, I wonder if he's going to go into this. I was looking forward to that.
Actually, the next question, we're going to go into it more. Some proposed legislation seems more harmful than helpful. What would helpful legislation look like?
Man, this is not my area of expertise. You know, my whole thing's just to give people a bit of background. I've never been that interested in politics or legislation. You know, I've almost been blissfully ignorant on it, which has been kind of cool. But I do get that we need to have discussions. And that's why I love, you know, these discussions, Dan. You're really, you know, up with the play, with legislation and regulation. What would positive legislation look like? Well, you know, how do we, rather than, you know, it's like, I think it was you that was saying to me, it's right now, it's all about woe and there's nothing about go. It's all woe. It's all don't do this. Well, why don't we, instead of pointing the finger and saying, you can't do this, why don't we have it be more of an invitation for inquiry? And then not only an invitation for inquiry, but offer some information, some resources around, hey guys, this is what we're seeing a lot of people finding really effective. And right now our concerns are, we'll stick to nitrogen use and nitrates in our waterways. And rather than being like, you can't use nitrogen, it'll be like, hey guys, here's some resources that were found to be really effective. Let's provide some case studies of farmers doing it, because why I started Quorum Sense and why it's been so powerful. And you know, one of the things with you know, living systems as well is there's no top down, there's no top or bottom. It's just like, you know, we're all equal. Is that's really powerful. And for me as a farmer, when I used to get the reps come in and the flash vehicles and the soil test data is all there and it's all like, you know, really complicated, and I was sort of like, I would always take the advice, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I felt I had to. And that was really disempowering. I felt stranded. I felt paralyzed. There was no expression. And it's no wonder we have the depression and suicide statistics we do in agriculture. So rather than that, where there is no room for creativity, what powerful legislation for me would look like is more of a support structure, more of a, hey guys, here's what we're seeing is not working, and I think we can all agree. Actually, that's probably wouldn't even be said. Hey guys, here's some things that we can see are not working that well. If you're interested, we invite you to look into these different areas, these different opportunities that we are seeing working. And when farmers share that, farmers listen. So for me, when I was getting told by the advisor and I was like resentful towards the advisor, sort of like nodding my head and smiling, but in my head, like, what a tosser, coming in here telling me what to do. I don't even understand your language, man. Look at you and your flash truck. Why is he driving all that flash gear and I'm sitting here driving an old dunger? All these things. It was just, there's no expression, there's no options, there's no creativity. However, when I started having, like for instance, the Quorum Sense field days and things around just farmers sharing, man, I was hungry for it. It's like, give me more. Like these guys are doing it. It's like there's no top down. There's no cannot do this. I mean, in regenerative agriculture, there really is no cannots. There really is no you must nots. So I think it'd just be cool to almost get rid of the you must nots.
Yeah. And actually, I had a conversation with someone in the Living Systems community around the Climate Change Commission call for submissions recently. And because I put a submission in and a few others put submissions in. And I was just reading this person's submission and I just commented to him, isn't it weird how we're saying what they should tell the government, because it's the commission who advises the government, so we're telling the commission what they should tell the government, that they should tell farmers what not to do. And I said, look at how many times that word should is used in all of these documents. And he was like, oh yeah, true. In that feedback, there was 42 shoulds or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, is that really helpful?
Yeah, how limiting is the word should?
Yeah, we're just trying to really tongue-tie ourselves with so much rules and regulations, and really we're just, it's really unhelpful. Although the intention is to be helpful. Yeah, where was I going? Helpful legislation.
Yeah.
So helpful legislation, definitely, I really agree that it needs to somehow be supportive. And I really, really like the idea of being supportive in farmers taking initiative. So like Quorum Sense, and the government did actually, I mean, through a certain channel, support Quorum Sense, and they do. So yeah, like that sort of fund and even more free funds where the government, I guess, identifies good stuff going on and sees real value for environmental management. So instead of a top-down sort of saying, this is where we think you should be going and everyone needs to follow these rules, we've written them out like this, there's a process. Instead of that structure, and it's not a massive change, there's already some of this happening, but just a bit more of identifying things that are happening already and then injecting a bit of support into that. So especially around communication among farmers and and setting up groups. Like that's a really powerful way to get good positive change going, is having dialogue and communications and conversations.
That'd be where the branches within the Living Systems Network can be so powerful, the different groups.
Yeah, and really what's massive for me is farm planning. And farm planning seems to be looked at very differently by different groups. And at the moment, it seems that the government, the central government, and regional councils even, are looking at farm plans as though they're documents of what you should do. And really, I see farm plans as documents of opportunity and creativity. And so it's a document of creativity, but it's also a medium to tell the story of a farm.
Yeah, that allows for it to be as unique as it is, not a need to follow a certain.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
When I think into that, it's as long as farmers have the tools. So maybe helpful legislation can be along the lines of providing the tools or making them accessible, like real, like blank sheets of paper that the government can hand out, but not literally, but kind of like metaphorically, blank sheets of paper, tell your story and create your future, create your own policies. And then, so we're just going to kind of like give you the paper and stand back for a bit. And that could be really, really helpful, because it's often, things like country calendar. Country calendar is massive for telling stories of farm to urban people and to other farmers, right? So having more mediums of just telling farmers stories and then allowing a process for creating the future.
Do you know what I'm reminded of hearing you speak right now?
What?
That beautiful drawing. Are we allowed to just look at that? Are you okay with that? That one that we got for Living Systems?
Oh, yeah.
So check this out. Yeah, let's do that. Look at this. This is cool. So right here, harnessing the power of diverse perspectives as a powerful foundation. And this wee piece here, a helpful disagreement gets us moving as a community. I really like that. Choosing the tools applicable to your farm. This is not linear stuff, folks. This is very messy. It's not clear cut. It's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. And I just love that drawing too. Can we plug the person who drew that for us?
Yeah, Vanessa. Yeah, she did an amazing
Check this out.
job.
Something there we needed to explore. Spontaneously emerged. That's this Living Systems we're talking about. It's like it's not so much rigid planning. It's like allowing space for creativity. And often what's created cannot be predicted. It's very different. And that's what I'm excited about what you speak about, Dan, is allowing farms to capture what they're doing, which is diverse, which is different on each farm, through the likes of their farm plans, which allows full expression, full creativity. The legislation would be cool to allow for that full expression, full creativity. We capture all of this unique stuff and see what else comes up. We might discover some stuff, not just around ecological function and food production, but around our social activity and what's effective in the way that we operate as human beings.
Yeah. Well, that was the last question. And I think on that, when you talk about that, and when I think about that and talk about what helpful legislation looks like, the more you the more I think about it, the more it's not even needed. Like that support from government is nice, and it's kind of like the it can help accelerate some of the stuff. But man, once you start thinking on those lines of what's possible, and all you need is a blank sheet of paper, it's like we don't need the support.
Yeah.
We just need less restrictions. And yeah.
You and me both, man. That's something we agree on there. Yeah. We need blank sheets of paper. We need writing or creativity mediums, and we need hands, lots of hands for drawing.
Yeah, which links it beautifully to that first question, how to contribute to the movement without owning land. Well, we need you. We need your hands.
Yeah. We need your creativity. We need your expression.
Yep.
Everyone has something to contribute, and a lot of people go to their grave without having expressed that, like something that could have made a contribution, something that could have really changed the way that the world operates. And we're inviting you to express that, get that on paper, get it out of your head and into creation. There's no judgment in the world that we are creating. There's certainly no judgment in living systems. There's no judgment on the Quorum Sense, Facebook page. Get those thoughts out of your head, as mad as they might seem. Get them on paper. Get other people's eyes on them, because I tell you what, it could just be something that changes someone's life or a community's life, or even bigger.
Yeah.
And it's about time we allowed for that. Less judgment, more acceptance.
Absolutely. So thanks, Lennart. Some amazing questions there. We got some really good conversation out of it, and I hope you got some inspiration for doing some good stuff with where you are. And thanks, Jono.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I don't even know Lennart, but I think he's contributed a lot just now.
Yeah. All right.